This is the last presentation on Unit 3, the meanings of tones in discourse. In this section, we will cover some of the special meanings or functions that intonation and pitch level have when they are used with the textual meaning. First, intonation can act as a cohesive device. It can also have a say in how relationships are established. Intonation may be associated with the grammatical construction of certain utterances, since some tone units may match phrases, sentences, or clauses. In this way, some links between prosody and syntax are established. Finally, the use of pitch level can express agreement between speakers or pitch concord between the ending tone unit of a speaker's turn with the initial tone unit of the next speaker. The closer association between syntax and intonation patterns occurs when we count, list, or enumerate items. Three tonal combinations are possible: one in which the first and second item are expressed with a referring tone, and the last element in the list is expressed with a fall tone. When this happens, we can say that the list has no more elements. The second intonation arrangement occurs when all the elements are produced with referring tones. If this occurs, it means that the sequence can include further items. The third possibility occurs with fall tones in all the items in the list. This generally happens when the elements in the list do not involve a cohesive unit. They do not have equivalent features, or each of them represents a category on their own. And an enumeration may evidence memory or cognitive activity, for example, when the speaker does not remember all the ingredients or is creating the list for the first time. In this case, the items in the list may carry level tones. Like enumerations, where the additive "and" is the connector, disjunctions also display similar tone patterns. However, each element which makes up a disjunction is called an alternative. The following combinations can be found: one in which the first alternative is produced with a referring tone and the other with a fall tone. If the referring tone is used for both alternatives, then we can imagine that more alternatives can exist. When the alternatives have a fall tone and come in a sequence, then the subsequent alternatives seem to be a better alternative to the previous one. And finally, the intonation pattern which displays memory activity is the level tone. Do not forget the importance of enumerations and disjunctions lies in their pragmatic meaning. They are used to exemplify or reinforce certain speech acts, such as criticisms, harangues, decision-making processes, among others. Other syntactic structures which correlate with tone patterns are adverbials or adverb phrases, such as then, at the moment, etc. The intonation pattern will prototypically depend on whether the adverbial is a phrase or close initial or final element. At the beginning, the preferred tone pattern is the fall rise, and those in final position will generally carry a rise tone. In both cases, the temporal or locative information in the adverbial is shared or understood by the speaker. The intonation pattern can also help us distinguish the syntactic meaning from the discourse meaning of certain words. For example, the adverb now may have a fall intonation when it is used for topic initiation, and a fall rise or rise when it means at the present moment. The elliptical questions or elliptical making sure inquiries, to follow Brazil's terminology, are shortened versions of a full question. As competent speakers of a language, we are able to recover the missing elements and identify the original elicitation. The intonation pattern is typically a rising tone. But the questions which have been thoroughly studied in connection with intonation are tag questions. They can be associated with speech acts such as clarification requests, expansions, etc. And tag questions may have a mitigating function. Early gender studies reported that they were used mainly by women and displayed tentativeness. Our final feature of tag questions is that they may display pitch concord with the tone unit of the next speaker, as we're going to see now. The rise in tag questions is inherently dialogic, since the other speaker is invited to confirm the idea in the statement, like a making sure inquiry. The response by the next speaker may agree with the pitch level of the tag. However, if the listener produces a response with high key, it means that there is disagreement, and some mitigation will be required to maintain social harmony. That is, an FTA could be produced. The full intonation in a tag question demands agreement from the listener and is non-dialogic. This means that the speaker may continue speaking without waiting for a confirmation. If there happens to be a response, like the tags with rise intonation, there can be pitch concord if the listener agrees, or a lack of pitch concord if there is disagreement. Another structural name given to tag questions is tails. However, tails do not usually have a choice of intonation pattern. Most of the typical tails will have a rising tone. After reviewing the main syntactic units which have a correlation with intonation, we should focus more on the pragmatic effect due to their use. When they are employed, these grammatical structures may illustrate a gender use or a regional preference. They also may be associated very closely with a pragmatic intention or speech act, and they may be used to mitigate face-threatening acts, FTAs, or to avoid being tactless or blunt.